If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast. On this episode of Bigfoot Crossroads, I'm joined by Courts Griner of Texas. Courts has some awesome encounter stories to share. The only problem was, once we started talking, I barely had time to hit the record button. So here's our conversation, already in progress.
Or I guess we call it armchair research.
Yeah.
Back in 03, because I was like, man, I didn't know we had like Bigfoots here in Texas. And I remember that story, the story that you read on there, with my high school friend. I remember when that happened, and I was like, well, it kind of sounds like you saw a Bigfoot, but I thought that was like, that's in the Pacific Northwest. That's not here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And so years and years went by, and I remember he had a neighbor that lived about down the road from him, and about a half mile, and everyone that lived out in that area by the 1892 bridge, everybody was kind of, they talk to each other every now and then, but when he told his neighbor about what they saw, he's like, oh, that's that bear that I've been tracking. And I remember, yeah, I know it's a bear because I found his den. And I was like, I'm thinking, black bears don't make dens.
Yeah.
I don't, to my knowledge. I mean, I'm not an expert in black bears, but one, we don't get black bears in this area. And two, I mean, maybe we could, I don't know, but not up here by the Red River of Oklahoma and Texoma. But two, they don't make. I don't think they make dens. So back in 03, when I was at home for the holidays, I was in Deep Ellum, and I looked at this stuffed black bear at this pizza place, and I was like, "There's no way that black bear is like the size of me." He's like, "I'm short. I'm 5'2". And I was like, there's no way, because they described it as 7.5 to 8 feet.
Yeah,
and
there ain't no black bear getting that big. Not down here.
Right, exactly. So that's like north of Ontario or something like that. So I was like, that's really weird. So then I started that Christmas season, I started researching online. And that's when I found the Texas Bigfoot, all the database here in Texas and southern Oklahoma and the BFRO. And I was like, oh, wow. So now we got all these sightings and witness stuff from all over the place. Yeah. So that was the beginning of my armchair research. And then when I moved back home, one morning after I was out one night, I went out to the woods out by Lake Ray Roberts, and I had ran into a very well-constructed blind.
Yeah.
And then when I went back the evening or a couple of days later in the evening to go photograph it again, I wish I still had these pictures, because it was that year, that first part of 2005, I lost a hard drive. So I lost all these pictures. I'm sure I could probably find some floating around somewhere, some modified, but when I went back to go take a picture of it again, something had broken a tree off and drug it in front of the actual blind. So it was a blind in front of a blind. Like they had seen me there, and then now they were trying to put something in front of it. And so for several months, I was researching out at Lake Ray Roberts, and then got a very close, I'm not sure what kind of vocalization it is, but it sounded like a gorilla sounding off, going ho, 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 like that.
Wow.
And it was about 60 yards away from me. And it was very abrupt, like I had surprised them, or they were trying to warn the others. And it was the deepest voice I've ever heard in my life. It was, you could feel it in your chest. And I was just about to take pictures of a tree structure, and then I heard that. I grabbed my satchel. I was like, ran.
I'm gone.
Got back to the tree line out into the field again. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. It was cool. It was cool, but it was kind of scary, but it was cool. So that summer, or what was it that summer? Oh, no, that was during the summer, and then into the fall. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the stuff I post on my Facebook with David Hawley.
Yeah.
Timberline Bigfoot. So that fall is I got invited. I had been talking to David Hawley when I was living in Wichita Falls in 2004 about Bigfoot stuff, and I had found his little. At the time, it was like we didn't have social media back then. It was like basically like what is it called? Like what do you call it?
Like a message board?
A message board, yeah. He had gotten a little message board. And I had been talking to him all 2004 since I was living there. And when I graduated in 2004, when I moved home, I was still talking to him. So I was kind of relaying to him about what I had been experiencing out there. And I had never met him, never researched with him before, never met him in person. But eventually he said, hey, Courts, we're having, in 2005, in the fall, like in October, we're having one of our expeditions here at Pat Mays Lake. And I said, oh, that's cool. I said, would you want to come out? And we'd love to have you out and research and hear some of your stories and whatnot. So I said, yeah, that's cool. So I came out, and my wife came out with me. It's one of the few times she's not really into it, any of this, but so she came out with me out here. But got to meet the Timberline group, and that was kind of the beginning of my journey as a researcher, because I saw and heard some really cool stuff out there. I wouldn't call it a full-on encounter. When I was with them, it was like it was like the tree structures that I see here, but with just bigger cedar trees. Like you could tell that it was like whatever I experienced here is like tenfold there at Pat Mays Lake in near Paris, Texas. So when I came back from that, I was kind of still up on the fence about having never seen an actual Bigfoot, so I can't really say for certain if what did what. But not long after that, I think it was not long after Halloween, right after October ended, is when I went back out to my woods and was taking some pictures back there, because we had 11 acres with a big pasture, and you got to go through the pasture and get out into, I don't know, I would say it's a football field size a chip of woods. So we have a barbed wire fence going all around our property. And the neighbor's property next to us wraps around ours. So that makes sense. Yeah. So because it used to be all one property, and so I guess as landowners came and built houses there, they kind of just fenced it off.
Yeah.
So the Nixons next door to us down the way, it's about a quarter mile down the road. There's wraps around ours. So if you go all the way through my property, you can go into their property, which I have before, because there used to be a little log cabin back there. So, when I was back there, I was, I had done knocks before out Lake Roberts, and I had gotten some, results from that, either knocks back or vocalizations. But, I was just playing around like, oh, this is what the Bigfoots do. And I was like, and then I started hearing knocks back at me from across the fence line next door to me, because they have a woods on the back of their property that sweeps through. It's real super thick. That's where the old log cabin was. And I was like, okay. So
now, this is all like private property.
Yeah, this is like I'm standing on my property, and I just kind of start walking through the woods. As you go west, it starts to have like a big clearing on the western end of it, but then it has like the corner of it has those big thick cedars.
Yeah. So
you can't see through. But I'm sitting back there, I'm like listening for vocalizations, or I'm listening for like some more knocks. But then I hear, like, you could tell like the fence line is like you hear, like, I was about 50 yards away from that clump of cedars in the corner, and you could hear the branches going. You hear something shifting its weight on the on the leaves. And I couldn't see anything, but I was like, whatever's there is actually very large. So I was like, I just kind of started stepping back and like, all right, I'm not going to investigate, because by that point, after hearing the vocalizations at Lake Roberts and seeing the structures and stuff, I was like, okay, I'm not on the fence anymore. I pretty much believe that we got these creatures in this area. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to advance any further. So I just kind of kept my distance. And I started getting back to the woods, grabbed my backpack, and I was like, all right. So went out back into the pasture and looked around with I think I had binoculars or something. I think it was, like binoculars. I'm looking across their pasture, and, I was looking at the tree line. It's like early October, so there's still a lot of good foliage there. But things started, the leaves are starting to come off and things are starting to thin out a little bit. And I said, you know what? I thought to myself, like, maybe I'm doing this Bigfoot thing way too much. I'm thinking everything I hear and everything that I experience is starting to be Bigfoot related, and I can't be that way.
Right.
So I go back and then that night I was on. This is back when we had AOL and Instant Messenger on there and stuff like that. I was flash from the past. So we were talking, and I kept hearing, because we have like a long driveway, and then our 11 acres. So our driveway runs along the railroad, and I kept hearing like footsteps and swish, swish, swish out in the front yard. And it's a good, I don't know, quarter mile from my house up until, I don't know if my driveway's up a quarter mile, maybe it's a little bit less than that, but it's a long way away up to the Lynch's house in front of us. And I kept, every time I'm talking and chatting with her, I was like, she knows I'm into the whole Bigfoot thing. I've experienced some pretty neat stuff, and she got to see some pretty cool stuff that I'll mention about later during the trip, our first trip out with David Hawley. But I kept hearing stuff, and I was like, babe, I was kind of responding to her, like telling her what I'm experiencing. So I get up and I turn the floodlight. We have floodlights around our house. The porch light was off, but we have floodlights, so I just flipped those on, and I'm like trying to. And I was like, I didn't want to go outside, but every time I flip the lights back off, I go back to the computer, I start hearing that swoosh, swoosh, swoosh out in the front yard in the leaves. And I was like, when you grow up out in the country, it's like, it's not a matter of if or not. You either have somebody on your property or you don't.
Right.
And it's not. What I'm hearing is bipedal. Like, I actually got up off the computer, put my ear to the wall, and our porch is right there, and so I would hear swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. I was like, something is.
I mean, that's got to be like pretty close to the house.
Yeah, it's right in the front yard, and I would hear occasionally. I would hear the vibrations of the foot, like footsteps, like on the front porch. It's a cement front porch, so I was like, okay, so. No, it gets crazier. So I had my desk set up, my art desk set up with my computer on it, and there's the window right in front of it. So I was listening, I had my ears to the wall, and there's a little gap, about a 5-inch gap, with the blinds are up, 5-inch gap, looking out into the night. You can't see anything, unless you maybe put the floodlights on, but it's still hard. I didn't have the floodlights on at the time. So I'm putting my ear to the wall next to the window so I can listen for more weird stuff. And I noticed that either on the porch or just off the porch, because there's a little drop off, like a 2-foot drop off, there's a pair of red eyes looking at me.
No.
And I said, yeah. And I'm going, it just kind of, I was like squinting my eyes for a second, like, and then they're kind of doing the back and forth, like the rocking back and forth like this. And I went, okay. And I jumped back up, and I said, okay. So I was kind of telling my mom, because at the time I was back home from college and I was living back in my parents' house, and I was like, my mom she did like transcription work, and she's up late, and I was trying, she knew I was into like some of the Bigfoot stuff, and I said, like the stuff that I was trying to encountering out in the woods yesterday, well, it sounds like something's out at our house right now. And she goes, well, I don't know. I mean, you might want to leave it alone, whatever. You know, my mom's one of those people like, whatever. If it's a snake, leave it alone.
Right.
If it's a rabbit, armadillo, just leave it alone. And so anyway, I got her, and I said, I'm gonna just hang out by the front door for a second. And so she went back to her doing her thing, and I was by the front door, and I decided to take the floodlights, and I took the switch, and I went click, 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 click. So all 4 floodlights around the house started kind of doing that alarm. And the weird thing is I heard this strange little mumble outside. It was like, like
Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, like Mr. Magoo. It's just weird. It was like deep. And I was like, oh, okay. So so what I did was I was like, hey, I told my mom, I was like, look, I'm going to get my shoes, and I'm going to go down to Anna's house, her parents' house, down in Carrollton. And just at the same time, she had just graduated, so she was living back with her parents. And I said, and you know, I've spent the night there before, so I said, hey, I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll investigate whatever during the daytime. She's like, oh, okay, well, whatever. So, I was getting my shoes on, and I was looking out back through that little gap of the blinds at the bottom of the window, and I could see the Lynch's house. You know, those big poles with the light.
Yeah.
You know, farmhouses have those poles, and it's a lit up area before the barn or something. So I had one of those, so you can see the silhouette of the tree branches and the fence line and everything. And as I was looking at the time of my shoes, I see 2 large 8-foot tall creatures, one and then another one too, go past that light. So you could see the outline of them. You couldn't see the detail, but you could see the silhouette of them. You know, broad shoulders, little head. And I remember one of the ones, there's a branch that was in my yard about 7 feet up, and its shoulder hit that branch. So I saw the branch go back and forth when the shoulder hit it.
Wow. And
I said, oh shit. So I said, Mom, I'm going to have to, I'm going to open the store. I want you to come out there with me, because whatever I see, I don't want to be the only person out there. She said, okay, well, whatever. So we opened the door, and we're standing on the porch. We got the floodlights on, and I'm listening. And she goes, I don't hear anything. My mom, I mean, even back then, like 16 years ago, she was kind of oblivious. Both her and my dad were kind of oblivious to anything. And we're sitting there, and I could hear knock, 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 down by our pond and by the tree line down that way. So hearing that, I was like, one was, it must have been a group of them, and one staying behind down by the tree line, and they can tell that we're onto them. So apparently it was trying to warn the other ones. As we're standing there on the front porch, I heard there's a bit, like, our porch goes down. It's got that, it's a typical little early 90s Texas house with a 1-story. It's got the overhang porch with the poles and the beams, or whatever. And the porch goes all the way down, and then there's, right when you get off the porch, there's a big, huge oak tree. Like, it's been there for, I don't know how long it's been, probably 60 years or more. And it has a big overhang branch that goes over the house. And I hear something like something's kind of scraping the tree. And then I hear the branch over the house go kaplunk, kaplunk on the gutter. And then I hear thud, 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 thud on top of the house. And I'm going, okay, I'm not going to get out in the yard and look up there and turn around and turn the flashlight on. Nope. So I said, and my mom, she's like, I don't hear anything. I was like, all right. So I said, Mom, we're going to go back inside the house. I'm going to go out to the back garage into my car. And then when you see me pull away, I want you to close the garage door. And if you hear anything, I want you to call the sheriff's department, because, Dad knows. My dad's had to call the Grayson County, or not, I don't know, the Collinsville Police Department, because we had somebody pass out in the car in our driveway because they thought my driveway was a road, apparently, one time. So he's familiar with them. But I said, if you hear anything but by the house, just call the Collinsville Police Department because they're the closest. And she's like, oh, okay. So I go out the back and I get in my car and I go down to Carrollton for the rest of the night. And Anna was like, when I got there, I told her what was going on. So she could tell I was physically somewhat shaken, that I didn't want to be there because there's no way that I could just stay there and sleep the rest of the night. I was like, what's this going on outside? Anyway, so when I came back the next day, back in 2005, we had, like a lot of droughts going on. There were I looked all around my front yard by the fence line, but the ground was like, rock solid. Dirt was almost like cement. So there's no tracks anywhere. Looked all around by the porch, no tracks. I was like, well, shit. So I grabbed my camera, which had a 18 to 55 millimeter lens. Is nothing, it's a wide angle lens. You might be able to do some portraits with it, but as far as anything long range, can't, and I brought a pair of binoculars again. So I went over the fence line or walked through the corral area where my horses were and went out straight across the pasture heading toward my fence line and walked the fence line and toward my woods. And then I got to a certain spot and I looked and I saw the donkey and the couple, like 3 or 4 cows, and they're all just kind of looking at me. And then they all of a sudden just kind of got up single file and left, which is really rare. I don't understand why they would do that at the moment, because they've never done that before. They all just sit there and look at me and they graze. That was the Nixons are the ones that had the cattle and the donkey. So I'm sitting there and I noticed across the fence line past them about, I would say, 300 meters. I'm just guesstimating 250 meters. It had to have been more than 2 football fields. But I noticed a bright or auburn animal. Because you go through their pasture, and they have their front pasture, which is closer to their house. And then you have the back pasture, which is like he has the guy that owned the property. He's got to go through a cow gate and then go through to the back end of the property. But they have a huge woods back there that wraps around ours and then connects to ours, and there's just a little sliver of pasture separating our woods and their woods. So I noticed, I see this big animal down there. It looked like another, you've seen like auburn colored cows, how they just stick out, Yeah,
like the white face.
The white, they have, or just solid auburn, fiery auburn color. And I was like, oh, okay, we got one cow just sitting down there. So I pull out binoculars and I look. And when I look through the binoculars, it's not a cow. It looks like the best thing I thought. I was like, well, is that a bear? I don't have brown bears here, like an auburn, fiery colored brown bear. Like, it was kind of a two-tone, like the top shoulders or whatever were like that dark burnt auburn, and then the rest of it was like that brighter auburn colored cattle.
Yeah, like it got lighter as it went down. Yeah,
and the shoulder, covering the shoulders, was like a big, like a darker brown, and like the upper back was covered in, and so it was like a darker brown color. And I was like, that's weird. So then I looked, and then it repositions itself and peeked out from the foliage at me.
Cows don't peek.
Cows don't peek. They don't lean out. They don't, at least I don't know about the cows anywhere else, but yeah. So this thing's leaning out, and what I saw clearly was the biggest orangutan I've ever looked at in my life.
Wow.
It looked, I couldn't see too much detail, but you could tell, it looked like just an oversized, or it was like an orangutan on steroids. And that's the best way I could describe the face. Maybe the face was a little bit different. I don't know if it was too human, but it looked very primate. And it would lean back out again, and then lean back. And then it would kind of rock between leaning out. It would rock back and forth. And then leaned out, and then it slowly rose up with its hands like dangling between its legs, and just kept going and kept going and kept going, and then it reached about 8.5 feet, 9 feet tall. And then as it rose up, it was just super graceful. I mean, have you ever seen like an elephant just kind of get up off the ground, and he just kind of those big, nice, big, real solid, smooth movements in his legs as it walks? That's what it did. And it had it was like its arm, that classic Bigfoot walk. And I could see, it was a bright sunny day that day, so you could see the shining sheen in its leg muscles going. And you could see like the hair hanging off its arms and everything. So it kind of kept its eyes on me as it walked, was kind of swinging its arms, and then it sat back down. And then behind it looked like it squatted back down, but then behind it came up another one, and the same color. And the funny thing was, as I looked through binoculars, I could see them kind of communicating with each other. Like you could tell like they were talking. They would look my direction, and then the one in front would lean back and like look at it. It kind of looked like their mouths were moving. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh my gosh, look like they're talking about me. Like, I guess they couldn't really see me too well. They just know that there's a person 300 yards away in another pasture looking their direction. But, obviously they don't know that I have binoculars with me and I'm looking at them, So, the sad thing with all this is, at the time, like I had this camera with me. It was my first digital camera ever. Oh, not my first one, but it was my first SLR, digital SLR. And it's, 2005, it was a, what do you call it? It was like 5 megapixels at best. And I remember, I think one, I was in shock seeing them. And two, I kept thinking to myself, if I take these pictures and put them and show somebody, all they're going to see is a auburn colored speck. And they're going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Looking back on it, I really just wish I just would have just snapped pictures, because it would have documented that day. But, oh well. but so it's the encounter. That's not the end of the encounter, because so I watched them for, I guess, a few minutes. And it looked like they were becoming agitated, because you could see them rocking back and forth. That's what primates do when they're agitated. They kind of do the chimpanzee rock. And so I started backing up. I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll slide back to the house and tell my mom that what just came up the house last night. I just got a good look at it. And I know my dad had been wanting me, even before I went out there to the pasture, my dad was like, hey, I need you to help me dig this ditch thing or something that afternoon. I was like, all right. So I could already tell him he was already trying to get me to come back into the house and help him do that. And I was like, well, shit. So I started backing up and walking back to the pasture, and then I noticed something moving through my woods that was like a charcoal color. And I knelt down and got the binoculars back out again. That's the third one, but that one was he was real big. He was like 4.5 feet high, but he was on all fours moving through the woods. So I was going one direction and he was coming back that direction, like the opposite direction. So he was heading back toward the fence line through my woods, toward the other ones. And I stopped. I laid down on the ground. I looked at him. He stopped and looked at me, and he's on all fours. And I would say it was about a football field and a half, maybe. I would say maybe just 100 yards. And I watched him for a few seconds, about a minute or so. I could see him a little bit better with binoculars, because the weird thing with him is he immediately, when he saw me, he headed for the first cedar tree that he could find on all fours, and he would lean out. And the thing was, is you could see his eyes shining in the sunlight, if that makes sense. Like his eyes were reflecting red. And you could kind of see it behind the foliage.
Mm-hmm.
So he would lean out and look at me, and then he would turn his head right and look, because that's the direction he wanted to go. So I figured he's trying to figure out how to get out of this area without me viewing him. But
he was making a plan.
He was making a plan. And the weird thing is, man, is you could see his face looked like some big mean old chimp.
Huh.
That's what he looked like, a big mean old chimp. And he had some gray striations in him, in his hair, and he had kind of like a little bit of a beard hair, like a I called it an Amish beard, a little bit around his lower jaw.
Yeah.
And he had dark charcoal and gray striations in his hair all over him. But you can see his chest breathing up and down as he looked at me. And it was almost like, come back here. I dare you.
I'll pass.
Like, no, I'll pass.
Whenever he was on all fours,
right?
What, did it look like a chimp walking, or was it more straight backed, or?
It was weird because I couldn't really see his legs. The reason why is he was above the foliage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's one at the time. Now, the woods had changed over the years, but there's one section of the woods that was kind of, you could see all the way through it. So that's where he hit it. That's where I had seen him, like our paths met at. And I was trying to look and see him, but I just saw him move. And he just stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And then I guess we both saw each other at the same time, and I think he knew something was up, because I think seeing me on the ground trying to view him, that was a telltale sign. That was probably reading it in his language, because they do the same thing with us.
Yeah, dropping down,
dropping down, and so I got up. I could hear my dad saying, "Courts." He needed my help doing this labor work, and I was like, well, shit, all right. So anyway, I went inside, and I had described what I saw to my mom, and she said, I think you should just leave it alone. And I said, okay, all right. So that's what I saw that day. Wow. And it's funny because my older half brother Billy was living, he had bouts of alcoholism. He would lose a job and stuff. So he was staying, he had a new job, and he was staying in a room in our barn that he had set up, and he had his desk and a bed and air conditioner and stuff. And he had his friend Eric come out and visit every now and then. Eric would park his truck next to the horse gate by the railroad tracks. And you know how railroad tracks, there's thick foliage on both sides.
Yeah.
Even with houses around, stuff like that. So one night he was talking with Billy, and then he went in. He had to talk to my dad about something, and he went back. He left the house, and he was walking to his truck, across the driveway to his truck, out there by the fence line, by the railroad tracks, and he came back inside and was talking to my dad. He was like, is there anybody over on the other side of the tracks? Because someone was just following me. And he said, when I stopped, it stopped. And then I started walking again toward the truck, and then the footsteps would happen again. So I'm not the only one that's experienced something there. So he got in his truck that night, and he just thought, he never knew really what it was. But I was like, oh, wow. Because that's my brother Billy had told me that the next day after that happened. But after that, I remember the time that I was living there, I would have, if I had to go out to go photograph at night or go into Dallas or something, I'd have my mom leave the floodlights on every night, because after that, it was just like, nope. I remember getting out of my car one night, and you could hear something jump off of a fallen tree. You could hear both feet land. And start following me as I walked around to the front of the house. Yeah. And I said, oh hell no. So those floodlights are staying on. I'm sorry. But after that is when I really, I guess devoted a lot of my time to being a researcher. Ended up eventually getting a 300 millimeter lens. It's a kit lens. Yeah. It's a piece of shit. It's a piece of shit lens, but it took great He took good photos of wildlife, and I think he used it for sports, but nothing fancy. $150 lens, but I waited in that same spot later that year for something to emerge across that pasture again. And I think what happened was that they knew that I was looking for them, and I think they just never showed themselves. So,
do you think they're still there?
It's questionable. I'll put it to you like this. Here's my theory, and this is something that I learned from David Hawley that he told me. They don't migrate far, but they rotate their area. Mm-hmm. So if it's a lake, like Pat May's Lake, he said, I'll tell you what they do here. They said, here's the south side of Pat May's Lake. Here we are. And we're going to hunt and we're going to hunt and gather all the resources south side of Pat May's Lake until there's nothing left. And after a few months of doing that, and there's nothing, it's slim pickings on resources, deer, hog, whatever, they head across to the western side of the lake in wildlife management. And they'll be there for about 4 or 5 months, like a group of them or several groups of them. And then when that's done, they'll go hit up the northern side of the lake, depending on when hunting's going on, hunting season. If it's, and then work that side of the lake. About 8 months to 9 months, 10 months later, after this rotation, later on in the year, they'll be back at the original south end of Pat May's Lake, where population of animals have gotten back to normal numbers again. So the resources are back, and they just work that rotation. These guys were around, and I remember hearing some knocks every now and then at night or something like that when I got out of the car. Were around for a while. And I remember after me and Anna moved into our first apartment in Denton, I would come up there to visit. And I remember I got out one evening. I got out of my car. It was evening. It wasn't nighttime. It was just evening. And I heard all the way across the quarter mile to the road, and then across the road was the 302 acres that is nothing but cow pasture and woods. And there was like it was that classic roar. It was that classic Bigfoot howl, roaring howl that came there. I just sat there and listened to it, and I said, "Holy shit!" And it was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," and you could tell it was coming from that 302 acres. It was from my road to the next road down from us. And I sat there and listened to it for about 30 seconds, and then it was quiet. I said, that's probably where they're based at, but I can guarantee that they will probably hit those woods and the Nixon's woods up eventually again. They might come through. That's what David Hawley had always told me, is that his son, JD, would experience something about maybe once every 6 months at their house. And then it's gone, and then it's gone for 5 months, and then it's back 6 months later or something like that. Yeah, it's really weird. Like they have like one or two that come through the area. They're there for like a month or so, and then they're gone. It's funny because one of the bands that I photographed here in Denton is a bunch of older guys that play metal music. Their bassist, his mom and dad are the ones that bought my old house, or my mom and dad's old house. And I've never, I don't know if he knows about the Bigfoot research stuff that I do, but I'm really curious if they've ever experienced anything. I can tell you this, things I found out months later after my encounter. I walked down to the pond, and it's got a big slope, like it's a typical, you dig it out, it's big, and you know how and here you have these big trees that go over the fence line. Yeah. Okay. And I noticed something on the back side of my pond where the big hill is. Like, you can stand behind that hill and be completely hidden and look at the house. the branches from the tree behind you by the fence line have been broken and twisted and downward. So basically they created a blind right there. And I stood behind the blind, and you could see right there, you have an open view about 100 yards away across the pasture to the front porch where my dad smoked cigarettes at night. And you follow the
spot.
Yeah, it's a people watching spot. My dad would never know. You know, he would turn on the porch light, he would turn on the floodlights, he'd go out there and smoke a cigarette. Not even a clue. If you follow the fence line, the trees down farther, and you turn around, you have the view of the backside of the house. And I noticed there was the area where I used to wait at. The reason why I picked the spot to wait at with my big long lens was a big, those big thick cedars that go all the way down to the ground. It's a different type of cedar tree. It's those Texas ones that are like, you see them a lot by the Oklahoma border.
Yeah.
And there's a whole tree or part of the branches of the one that goes above it, like the oak tree, broken and put down in front of that. So that's a blind. It's been, like the whole, it's been put into it so well that the cedar tree had been bent over a little bit. And you stand behind that, and you can see the back bedroom of the house where my mom had the light on, working on transcription stuff late at night. So they had been watching our place for who knows how long.
It sounds like an area where they, would just hang out and watch people and get livestock feed and mess with the cows and horses, whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, and what's the weird thing is our horses never. I would look at the horses. Like we had 2 horses. We had 3 at one time, but we had one ate some berries and he died, and he was buried in the back pasture. And but watching both our horses, I was like, they're not doing anything. I kind of used them as a early warning signal.
Yeah.
And I never saw them react weird. So I don't know, either they just didn't want to be around the horses, or I don't know. What I was worried about at the time is we had a Great Dane, and my mom would just open up we had a big sunroom. As you go outside the house, there's a sunroom, then you open up a screen door, and then you let our Great Dane out. He would do his business out there in this little backyard area of the fence. But he's about the same size as a deer, and he had a hellacious, bark. But I was really worried about him because he could have easily gotten snatched up. As big as he was, he would have gotten snatched up real easy, and they would have done the same thing to him as they do to deers. But when he passed away from natural causes, one of the bizarre things I had ever found concerning this topic was when we buried him. And we buried him. People are like, you buried your animals in the back pasture? I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody?
Yeah, that's a pretty common country thing.
Yeah, like we were like, well, why not? Everyone else, like the people around here are like, oh, dog's been cremated. And when they had to be, put to sleep, we buried him in the back pasture, and he even had like a little stick, like a little cross thing put in there. I went back. I was making my little rounds around the fence, around the tree lines and the fence areas, and looking around for stuff. And I noticed where he's buried at, there was a stick. I don't think it was the stick that was there for his little headstone thing. It was a stick from somewhere else, and it was dug into, like not fully, but it was dug into about 1.5 feet with a stick.
Wow.
Yeah. And it kind of pissed me off. I was like, these motherfuckers better not be messing with our Great Dane buried there. But yeah, it's weird. It's like they knew something was buried there, and I can't think of anything else
they might have watched you guys bury him.
Yeah, possibly. I remember when that happened. They said that we had to put Ivan to sleep, and I was living in Wichita Falls at the time. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry, And my mom was like, well, and we're going to bury him in the back pasture. I said, well, that's good. He'll always be there. But yeah, I was like, the hole is here. The dirt is piled over here. And there's a freaking stick sitting there. And it's like, there's nothing that's going to come onto my private property and do this. And, it was bizarre.
Yeah, that is weird. I've never heard of anything like that before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they probably witnessed us bury the horse back there. I mean, we had to have a bulldozer to build.
Yeah.
So I got the rundown eventually on what it all takes, the logistics of burying an actual freaking horse.
Yeah.
And
not an easy thing.
It's a bulldozer job. But I'm sure that they probably knew that horse was buried back there too. Yeah, it was bizarre. That was one of the bizarre things of my time there. Yeah, it was weird. But my encounter was pretty lengthy and pretty detailed. My only regret, I hate telling people that I didn't take pictures. And I remember before when Dad passed away, and my mom sold the property and moved down to Denton. I think I came up to help move some boxes and some stuff, a truckload of stuff. And I took one more trip out into the pasture one evening. And I got to about the spot where I had witnessed the one in the backwoods. And I remember at the time I had the same lens. So I just said, let me just see what this would look like. And I stamped a couple shots, and I looked at the view thing in the back of the camera, and I'm like, you know what? I probably could have gotten some detailed shots of that one that I saw in our woods. Maybe not the ones in the property next door, but I think the one that was in my woods, the charcoal gray one, I think I probably could have had enough. And then I switched lenses and I put my 300 millimeter one on, and I went click, 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 and I was like, oh man, that would have ended this whole debate. That would have been like, pack your bags, gentlemen, war's over. But yeah, it would have ended this debate. It would have been some of the most detailed pictures if I had that. And it's funny because when I got this camera, I opted for the cheaper version kit. I was I don't really shoot sports or anything. What am I going to need a 300 millimeter lens for? Right. I just do kind of portraiture, and I do like documentary stuff in nature. So, but if I had that lens, I would have ended up with some hellaciously good pictures. But I probably, like I said, I probably should have taken the pictures anyway, just to have, and I would have shown only certain people. Like what else? It was with that 55 millimeter lens. It's like there's no way, right. Especially at 250 meters, 300 meters. It would have just looked like a speck, and but I don't know.
I mean, everybody's always asking, like, why aren't there any pictures of them? And
I tell people,
professional photographer, so
right.
Why don't you cover that?
Yeah. So this is what I tell people. I get that question all the time, and I tell people, one, at the time, it was a hobby. At the time, it was like that. I had just gotten out of school. I had an interest in photography, but I was looking for a graphic design job. I was getting some graphic design jobs here and there, and some, it wasn't anything photography related. But I tell people, when people ask me, like, how come? I mean, there's so many people that have cameras and stuff, and I said, well, people don't think when they experience something like that. One, they don't know what they're doing. Like I got people that I know who have an SLR, kind of like mine, and they're taking pictures of horses in a pasture somewhere, and I'm like, they suck. Right. I saw some ducks in a pond through the foliage, and I was trying to get pictures of them, and I'm like, well, these are not. Well, I don't say anything sucks. There's nothing that sucks. It just doesn't work. And they're like, well, what do you mean it doesn't work? And I'm like, well, you're out of focus, or this is out of, and when people encounter something like this, like their fight or flight kicks in, and they don't really, especially if they're novice photographers, they don't know how to separate the I don't know, the emotions with doing what you need to do to get a good picture.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a wildlife, like with me now, when you're a wildlife person, you have something that you're stalking, whether it's deer, or whether it's a coyote or something like that, some kind of animal, and you see it through the woods, you do it on a regular basis. Your mind is trained, especially if it's a good ways away. And I know I've enough time to back out of there. But a lot of people, my answer to that is they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to. They want to shoot on program. They don't shoot on manual. It's either people have sent me their pictures and like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, one, it looks like you've taken the picture and it's been shrunken down into what is this, 25 DPI? And they're saying, and I'm like, you need to have the original picture. Oh, I have the original picture, but it's like it's been edited, and I'm like, to bring out whatever, and I'm like, well, it looks like it's a blob squatch. I'm sorry, I have to give people a crash course on how to take a good wildlife picture. That's one of the things that I do within this community. Is I try to give people free advice about how to take good pictures, and I give them an example of what you need to do to get a good picture of a Bigfoot.
It really kind of surprises me that, there's so many researchers out there that focus on, getting pictures or video or audio or whatever. And
sure.
They go out and they just buy some equipment, and then they just go out there and start trying to do it. But they don't take the time to learn how to use the equipment, what kind of equipment to get. They don't do any research in that.
They're using, I was telling this one guy, he was like, I have this camera, I'm snapping pictures. And I was like, well, you need to get something that's a little bit longer. It can get through the foliage, because he's like, well, it's from my video camera. It's still from it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, here's what's happening. You're zooming in, and the autofocus is zooming in. It's trying to autofocus on these twigs and branches, and whatever's behind there is not in focus. And then I showed him a picture. I said, here's my wife's granddad from Switzerland, and he goes in the Congo, and he's a wildlife photographer all around the world. And I said, I'm going to show you these pictures real quick. This is from his website. I said, look, see, he's got a nice little, you don't have to buy a $10,000 lens. You can buy a $150 lens, and you zoom in on it, and you keep it on manual, and then all the foliage goes away. And now you're looking at the ape face of this thing looking at you through the foliage. And that's what you need to have. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, can you look at this and see? And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I've heard stuff, and I know it's one of them, and I know they're close. I've got my phone. I'll take a couple of shots and I'll review it later. Same with David Hawley. He's noticed some other stuff. He happened to have his phone with him, so he took some shots and he sent them to me. And he's gotten some stuff that I'm looking at going, that looks like the backside of a chimpanzee, just not moving. And I told him to hold on to those images, but I try to tell people, like, look, it's good that you're taking advantage of the situation. Obviously, you got the picture, but this is what you need to do. And you need to have someone cover you with protection and have that camera on a tripod, zoom in, take the autofocus off, because you're going to be. I ruined a picture of a great bobcat picture. I saw a bobcat and I was taking photos of me, and it looked like a great picture until I got onto the computer, and then it ended up being, oh wait, I see the grass in front of them in the pasture was in focus, but the bobcat was not in focus.
Yeah, got a great picture of some grass.
Yeah, I mean, this one picture, I think he had some detail in his face, and I was snapping off pictures. I was all excited. That's another thing. People get excited. And, I'm like snapping pictures. I'm having a National Geographic moment, and I go back and I'm like, oh God, one shot. The rest of the photos, I mean, it's not too bad. It's just enough out of focus. It's annoying.
Right.
You could just tell that I wasn't thinking. And how I had just put the camera on autofocus and just use it like an old school. You know, that's why my longer lenses now, I still shoot film photography, and I use old school manual lenses on my digital camera and manually focus, because my mind knows when it's where it needs to be. I'm bypassing foliage and twigs and grass and stuff. I'm focusing to my subject, whether it's a bird or a Sasquatch or whatever. I'm focusing until my mind can see that there's detail there and start snapping. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, there's a picture that I want to send you. Yeah. And I'll send it to you later. You can have a look at it. I want to hear your opinion of it.
Okay.
It was out at Broken Bow Lake. We do our expeditions at an area at Broken Bow, in the northern region of Broken Bow Lake. I'm not sure if you've seen David Hawley's 1971 encounter story that I had filmed. That's at the same place. Okay. So we've been going out there for the past 10 years. In 2020, right before the pandemic got bad, we had a group, us and a few other younger researchers with us. And I was tired. I was going to take an afternoon nap in my tent. J.D. Hawley, David's son, was going to take a group of the younger guys and take them down the coastline and around the cove to an area where we've had a lot of experiences and stuff, away from the camp area, and go down the coastline on the other side of the cove. I said, okay. So I told one of the younger guys, he was like 18. I said, I'm not going with you guys, but you can take my secondary camera, which is the Canon 40D. It's less megapixels, but take the 85 millimeter lens, which is one of my good fast lenses. And I said, do me a favor, just document. If John finds a footprint, tracks, anything, if y'all see something up the hillsides, because you know how the Kiamichi Mountains are. It's just, they kill, you know. If you see anything, take a picture of it. He goes, yeah, that's cool, because I have my primary camera here at the campsite, so I'm good. And I'm gonna take a nap. You guys go out, document, and you show me what you get. He goes, okay. So he goes and takes some cool pictures, and I think they may have found some impressions along the shoreline. They he making faces at the camera. I mean, they had a good time. So I didn't really look at his pictures all the way through with detail until like a year later, like in 2021 sometime. I think like last fall, I decided to go back through the 2020 pictures of that expedition. And one of the things I like to do at Broken Bow Lake is if there's a faraway ridge, like those big ridges that overlook the lake. Mm-hmm. Those big steep hillsides, I like to zoom in and just scan. Like I take this on the screen on a desktop and I just slide it and look for anything out of the ordinary. Okay, so I'm looking at his pictures, and he took one where it's looking down the coastline, and you can see the cove, and then way in the back of the picture is the big, I don't know, it's a 500-foot steep hill. Like, it's not even a hill, it's a cliff line. And you can always see it when you're out there. It's like, it's this big, I can show it to you on the Google Maps, Google Earth, but it's a steep ridge line that's super high up. And I've always thought, if something's out there, that would be the most perfect hillside, perfect peak to view this camp area, this remote camp area when we're out here, or anybody else that's out there. It's a far away, like it's like a quarter mile, half mile away. Maybe not. It's probably about a quarter mile away, but it's high up. It's like 500 feet or something like that, and maybe not that much, maybe 300 feet. But I went to the top of that hillside. It's a very stark ridge line. And I'm just kind of going through, I'm following the ridge line, and then I see something that sticks out like a sore thumb. And it looks like something whitish gray, and it looks like it looks like you can kind of see his shoulders and head. You have to zoom into the photo almost all the way in to see it. It is pixelated, but you can see the shoulders and the head, and it looks like it's moving through the woods on top of that ridgeline. But if you really squint your eyes good enough, it's actually hugging the tree.
Huh.
It's a figure. And it's like plain as day. It's like that's something moving through the woods. And I scrolled left and I scrolled right to see maybe it's the sky, the white of the sky showing through the trees. But the trees are way up higher above it. And so I'm like, okay. So I zoom in on it and I'm like, that's a figure. And it's light grayish white. And it looks like it's positioned behind the tree, a huge pine tree, like those big tall ones out there in the Kimetes. And it's peeking out because it's leaning a certain way. And that kid was just snapping pictures down the coastline. Like he didn't even see anything that far away. And had I been there, I would have had my lens on my 21 megapixel camera. And I probably, every time that I go on down the coastline with the group, I always take pictures with the long lens of the ridge lines for this purpose, for what I'm describing right now.
Right.
So I look at that and I'm like, that's a dang figure. So that 2020 is when we were, I'm not going to say ambushed, but we had a very scary, interesting night. I'll have to talk with you a little bit more about what happened off record before I go into it publicly. But it involves one of our members and one of the guest researchers who's familiar with that area having a run-in or seeing that night a large 10-foot or 11-foot white, silver gray creature.
Wow.
And he says it was one of the alpha dogmen in the area. I don't know if it's his, I'm not sure if it's that one or if it's, how much of, I'm not saying I don't believe him, but he's had an encounter a couple of times with the same one. And when he came back to the campsite, he said it was silver and whitish silver and with blue eyes. His eyes reflect blue. And after looking at that picture and then looking back from what he said, I think that's our boy.
I mean, for something that far away, to show up on, the photo, it would have to be big.
Yeah. I measured. I'm going to try to do with that same photo. I'm going to try to pick out. I'm going to do a double picture on Photoshop. I'm going to take a square with the figure, and then I'm going to move it down the cliff to the water's edge. Not resize it or anything like that. I'm just going to move it down. And when I took my fingers on it, and then I scrolled down, when I scrolled down and looked at where the distance between both my fingers of how large that thing would have been, it was about 11 to 12 feet. Guesstimation.
Yeah.
But I figured it was weird because I was like, what he was describing that night, and then what I saw on that picture a year and a half later it's bright silver. And I'll send you the picture a little bit later on so you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's just kind of neat that I had ran into it after the fact that all that scary night happened.
So I guess you've probably done a lot of research around Pat Mays Lake.
We have. So I usually go back there. We did up until 2009, and then in 2010 we switched up and did Broken Bow. But we do still have in between our trip to Broken Bow every January or February. In the fall we'll have like a get together or a small research trip to Pat Mays. Yeah, I like researching there. I have some really good times there. Had some good scary times there too.
Have you experienced anything weird in that area. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We back in the day, we used to have a bigger group, and we had some people, guest researchers that would come out with us, and it was either someone out. We would split up in like groups of 4, and we would work the area, and we'd go out. It was good times. It was, the method of research was a lot different than Broken Bow, because Broken Bow, we're just out there and they come to us, and that's what makes it scarier. Whereas Pat Mays, we're at the main camp, and then we go out to the research. We have activity around the camp areas. But one of the stories I'll tell you about is the bathroom story. And at Kiwanis Club, you know the Kiwanis, it's one you rent, and it's got 2 loops. It's got a B loop and an A loop, and you can rent them out. So David and them would rent this out, and we could close the gate, and we would have the entire camp area to ourselves, unless somebody else had a reunion or something. But we are the only group out there between loop A and loop B. So we would just basically use the whole area to research. I think this was 2009. We had a guest researcher come out named Bob and his girlfriend, and I think it was his girlfriend's son. And I wanted to say there's something up with her son. I don't know on the mental level. He had something wrong with him. I don't know if it was what kind of spectrum it was, but
like autism or something. Or?
I don't think. Yeah, we have one of David's relatives who is autistic. She comes out and she's with us around the campfire and stuff, but she doesn't really, she doesn't go out and research with us. But I don't know if he was. I mean, I have friends who are completely there. I talk to them all the time. He's like, guess what? I have autism.
Yeah.
And that spectrum. He was a good kid. I just didn't know. It worried me because he didn't seem like he needed to be out here doing this. But regardless, and so. I remember Bob had come out, and they came out, and they were staying at a hotel or a motel in your town. And so they would come out and research this with us tonight, and they would go back to the hotel. And Bob, his conclusion was there's just not enough tributaries for the creatures here to have food and water away from the lake. And I'm like,
I heard that one before.
Yeah, I'm like, well, they don't need that. They come right out and get stuff here. Like they don't care. And there's, and so it kind of irked David a little bit, because they've been researching that area for a good 15 years or so. And, they've had enough encounters there that they've seen the creatures there. And, Bob just doesn't know what he's talking about. So, but that's cool. So one night, I can't remember, it was the first night. It might have been before the bathroom story happened. They were like, well, we're going to get in the truck and we're going to go to back to the motel. I said, all right. So he gets in the truck, and I think they went up to the bathroom to use the bathroom, the bigger, the ones with the showers and everything in Loop A. And as they came back down on the truck going out, they see a creature bound off from close to where our camp area was, by the pavilion, and bound across the road. So Bob's like, he takes the truck and literally goes off the road trying to go after it. That answers his question about any doubt of those creatures here. So, and that may have happened the second night, I think either later on that night, I don't know what it was. It was, but I know we had Bob and his girlfriend and his son and their son with us. And all our cars are we have a pavilion, and then all of our cars are kind of lined up like a little parking lot. And they have this bathroom out there. Looks like the bathroom that Time forgot from. It's like one of those it's made of wood, and it's got the screen door, and you open it. It's like, and you go in, and there's one light that comes down like above on a pole outside of it. Right. Yeah. I'm gonna have to take a picture. If I ever get to Kiwanis Camp one day, I'm gonna take a picture of this bathroom, and a thick wall of foliage and trees right behind it. Like if you're in the know, you don't want to go.
Yeah, nobody wants to go to that bathroom.
Yeah, but people do it all the time when they're out there. But when you're in the know, you'll wait to go. So, yeah. So we had just sent I call them our younger gunners, the one, and it's David's son, his good friend Michael, Carl, and Brandon, and they all got in the truck and went to Walmart to get more cable for our IR setup, to set up our IR cameras. They had just left. They had just gotten in the car. They had just left. They probably haven't even made it down the road to the main highway. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, and David was talking to Bob. They're sitting there with their back on the pavilion, talking about research. And I said, hey, David, I gotta go take a leak. I'm gonna go toward the bathroom over there. And he goes, okay. And I walked back and I look at this bathroom, and I've used it before, but something inside me, just an intuition said, you're not using that bathroom. Don't go over there. And I was like, well, yeah, you know what? My car is the last one over here. Let's see. Rose is somewhere else, so she's the only lady out here. So I just walked on the other side of my car and took a leak. And then zipped up, walked back around the side of my car, and was walking along the cars toward the pavilion. And I could see David and Bob, and they're talking. And David's looking, as he's talking, he's looking at me as I'm getting closer. And then I see him just bound off of where he was leaning up against the pole, walks up toward me, and he had his hand on his revolver, and he says, Courts, get your camera. Courts, get your camera. Go get your camera. And I said, okay. Well, hang on. And so I went, and then Bob was in following him, and then Rose and her son were following. Who else? Oh, we had a guy from Alabama that was with us a few years. He was also following them with their flashlights and whatever. So I got the little video camera at the time. It was just a little, we didn't even have high 8. We had the high 8 film cameras.
Yeah.
We didn't even have digital then, high definition digital.
Yeah.
So it was a high 8 film, but the camera had night vision on it. And I catch up with David, and I said, what's going on? He says, Courts, I'm going to tell you this. I was talking to Bob, and I saw you come back around the car, and I saw you walking toward me, and I looked behind you, and out from that light, from the darkness behind along where the ditch, because there's the road, the ditch, and then the bathrooms, and that light's lighting everything up in front of it, but it's just dark shadows behind it. But down that ditch line, I saw a figure walking behind you, and I thought, who? I was about to ask you who's following you down from the bathrooms, and then I noticed it's 9.5 feet tall and all gray.
Whoa!
It was a big, broad shoulders. But he said it was fixated on me, with just his arms hanging down, and he was just doing that walk that they do with their arms down. Walking how they do, like gliding.
Yeah.
He said, you just came around the car and you faced us and were coming back toward us, and that came out from the shadows. And he said its eyes were just fixated on you until I got up off here and I started walking toward it with my revolver. And he said then it bounded across the road. Really damn lucky I didn't use that bathroom.
Yeah. Were you with them during the big expedition where I believe they crossed the lake in a boat?
Okay. Yes, I was with that one. You want to hear about that one too?
I mean, if you want to talk about it, like I remember. That one I can. And that was the time. That was the well. Before I get into that I actually have that night what I just described to you. When we went searching for that one. I actually had the camera with me, and
It was an eventful night. We had hedge apples being thrown at us from the lake. So apparently that one that was following me, it dashed around through the shadows and got to where the lakefront was in the cattails. And so he was lobbing hedge apples, horse apples at us. Yeah, you could hear them coming you could hear them going through the foliage. And you hear the hedge apples landing on the road that circles the camp area. Yeah, that was an eventful night. But I'm glad I had that on. You couldn't hear anything like the actual stuff being thrown at us. You couldn't hear it on the camera, on the film. But oh well. But that year the boat. We had 2 years where we had a boat, and I think one was when we went to Visor, which is a separate story. But I think it was you're talking about the big expedition where we unfortunately gave Tom Biscardi the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot expert. He asked for our help, and we figured, well, David didn't really want to, but we wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think he had mentioned that he would give us maybe some financial help and some other stuff. And we were like, I don't know if that was the case or not, but we said, well, heck with it, I guess. So this is all going on before I got out there. And I got out, I came in on a Thursday, I think. And they had a big storm that weekend. The Wednesday night, I think Tom Biscardi took a bunch of people across the lake. And these are people like from California and some other places. They paid like $250 to go research with an expert. and just to let people know out there that anyone who wants to research with us, we don't charge people. If you want to come out, just come on out and bring your gear.
Yeah, Tom Biscardi was basically a charlatan. In my opinion, he ran his Bigfoot stuff as a business and was about the publicity and charged lots of money and always contacts the media whenever he's in town and puts on a big show.
I remember them telling me like the trailer was pulling in. He said, "Here comes the monster hunter." It says on the side of his thing. Yeah. So not with all that, what you just mentioned, as well as almost getting people killed. Yeah. And I will explain how that happens. So he took out people that paid money. And he took them directly across from the camp area. He waited on the other side of the lake back to camp and had his guys take these people over there. And the storm moves in, and the game warden, Glenda, she warned them there's going to be high winds, possible rotation, very dangerous lightning, and lots of rain. He gets over there, and these people are trying to research, and this thing hits. The boat gets swamped. So they have no boat. So he was telling people to F off on the radio, and people that had paid money for this, he was telling them, you better shut up. And it was bad. So they find out, they had David and JD had their own radio. So they were hearing this. They said, well, what are we going to do? So they said, we need to get a boat and we need to help these people because they're going to be stuck there. So they went and got his father-in-law's fishing boat. And they put it in, and even though the storm had kind of pushed through by then, the waves weren't too bad, but it was still not good waters to be in. They still had light rain. One of the guys who was with them was a guy named Hawk, and he was a what do you call it? He was a bounty hunter. I found out later on I think he's Cherokee, and he's a bounty hunter, federal bounty hunter. So he had a little fire going on this side of the lake. He had finally got a little fire going, and for everyone to but they were hearing stuff from the tree line coming at them. And these people have never done this before in their life, and they're all scared. And they didn't know what to do. So John and David were in the boat, and they went all across, and they said it was like a movie. Like it was like a scene out of a movie. They pulled up to the coastline, and the first thing out of their mouth was, "We're the Timberline Bigfoot Research Group. We're here to take you home." I mean, if heroic music would have played, it would have played right there. Like heroic military music would have played, it would have been right. Cue, hit the music. So it took about 4 times I think 2 or 3 trips to get everyone back. And his Biscardi's right-hand man, Java Bob, stayed. He was one of the last ones to come over. But we got everyone on there, and everyone was thankful for the ride. And they would go back over and pick up 2 or 3 more people, and they go back, because it was directly across the lake to camp. And Java Bob was the last one to, him and somebody else. So they got in the thing, and they thanked them. We got everyone safe out of there. So the next day I came out, David had told me when it all happened. And so it was kind of the vibe was kind of thick out that weekend, because it was like they were like, oh, we're so glad that you're all here helping research with us and stuff, but you could kind of tell it was kind of like, kind of bad vibe. And that, with that already going on, he was literally, his second plan for Saturday night was the big research outing. And you know how he is, he's like, we're gonna try to do this, and then we're gonna let the media know, and we know where the creature is, and we know where it's trapped. It's trapped on the south side of lake, and we know how to find him. He has nowhere to run, and we're listening to this, and we're going, oh my God. His first plan was to wait in the woods in a semicircle, and then when it gets there, everyone fire at it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very wise idea.
Not the greatest plan.
So I think somebody talked him out of that. And so what he wanted, so he had a thing against JD and David, because I think he knew by that point that we know the most info about this area. He had to get us out of the picture. The plan was that he was going to take one group, and we were going to take because we had some of our members go with him and his group. And then the other group. One group went to Clay's Bluff to research alongside the road and some of the area out there. And then he wanted us to go to Lamar Point. Are you familiar with Pat Mays Lake?
I'm familiar with the Lamar Point area.
Okay, Lamar Point. Okay, so that's where he sent us. And I don't know if you've ever seen him, Biscardi, talk. I like to make fun of the guy because I don't care. But he says, what I want you to do, okay, David, is I want you and your team to move through the woods toward Clay's Bluff, and I want you to push the creature toward us, right? And we're thinking that's 1,400 square acres of darkness. Okay. So we got one more little late dinner at Dairy Queen, and I leaned over to David. I said, David, I do not want to be anywhere near that guy. I want to be with you guys. He goes, I'm not going to, because at the time, this was my 3rd time maybe out with David, and I was still more of a documentary guy, just kind of, I was still kind of an outsider documenting this group. And he goes, no, don't worry, I'm going to have you with us. I don't know what he has planned, but I'm going to have you with us. So what we decided we were going to do, since he wants to go to Lamar Point, which is a bad, Bigfoot speaking, it's a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
Especially with just me, David, his son JD, little Mikey, who's first time out. Who else? Oh, and Rummy, with the guy from Alabama. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Man, I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, he's from Alabama. He's a nice guy, kind of quiet. Yeah.
You used to talk to him all the time. Real good guy.
Yeah. And Rummy was out with us, and so we got out there. We parked the car, and he said, "Well, I remember I used to have this on video that night because I had my video camera with me." He said, "I think." Well, we discussed it when we were at Dairy Queen. He said, "I think what we're going to have to do, we're not going to go through that woods. We're going to go the coastline." And even though it's raining, it's kind of lightly raining out. We're going to have to push into the woods a little bit, but we're going to follow the coastline. We're not going in that woods because that area between Clay's Bluff and Lamar Point is that's like the ambush marketplace somewhere in downtown Baghdad. Okay. That's basically what we're dealing with. I mean, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And it's 1,400 square acres. Like hell, we're going to be walking in there because we're not going to be walking out of there. So he said, I think we need to stick to the coastline. So I rode one of the funnier moments of that night. I rode with Big Kev, and Big Kev is no longer with us. He passed away from COVID. And I rode with Big Kev in his truck, and we were kind of, you could tell both of us were kind of uneasy as we went down this dark back road to Clay's Bluff. We're going to meet up at and then pair off into our separate areas. We had the radio on, and it was, what was it? That song by Clearance Creekwater. Don't come around tonight.
Yeah.
Bound to be your last. There's a bad mood on the rise. And we were just kind of sitting there. We're trying to ignore it. And I said, you want to turn the station, man? he says, yeah, let's do that. So he goes, okay, let me, okay, here we go. Oldies 95. There you go. So he puts on Oldies 95, and the first song is, oh, werewolves in London. I said, turn that shit off. So we get out there, and then that's where we paired up. And they have their group. A couple of our members were going to stay with Biscardi and research the area at night by Clay's Bluff, where it's a boat ramp, but I think they closed it due to high crime and stuff like that. They closed it. But we were allowed to be out there at night to research because there was no gate or anything. So we all went down to Lamar Point and got suited up. This is back when we had tactical vests, and they had John was pulling out every weapon that he had. He had his long machete. He had put it back in the back there. He had both his 45s. Little Mikey was carrying John's 308. And then I think David had his 9mm with him. And, I think Rummy had his 9mm with him. I was one of the only ones not armed. And all I had was a backpack and then my camera. So it was lightly raining on us the entire way. But as we made it, we sloshed through areas that were like knee deep of water. We would go into the woods, but we got about halfway down, and you already knew that they were following us. You could hear the footsteps out in the woods. You would be walking along, then the flash of the heat lightning, because the primary storm had just passed, but we had the light rain the whole way. We would, every now and then, we would hear a ooh behind us, or ooh, ooh, to our left up in the woods, because to the right was the lake.
Yeah.
And the only thing we could do is stay close, keep the flashlights in front of us, keep the flashlights behind us, and keep moving. So we keep going, and we would get a call on the radio from Biscardi's team, and we would say we're about here or wherever, and we're almost halfway where we should be rounding the coastline. Oh, I thought you were going to take the through the woods. Like, well, we changed that plan. So we continued on, and I remember the rain stopping, and I remember I could finally see the moon through the clouds, and I was like, "That's cool." It kind of lit up everything a little bit, and that's when we were rounding the part of the shoreline where it started going back toward, I would say, a little over halfway, and we were like, okay, I can see I couldn't see the people over there, but I can see where Clay's Bluff is now. So now we're going. And about that time, David says, everyone put your lights out to your left. And so it was a big clearing with a pine brush or whatever in the middle of it. And then it was thick woods. So it was like a semicircle, kind of like an area of the shoreline where it went up into like a small field. Yeah. But just had it encompassed by a semicircle of dense foliage. And David said, "You hear the baby crying?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What does it sound like to you? Does it sound like a human baby crying?" "Yeah." Okay. And he said that when he heard the baby cry, he put his light up there, and the first thing he saw was a female Bigfoot drop behind that big section of foliage and smack dab in the middle of that field. It's a 50-yard open area, 50 by 30, and with a big, huge area of like a little pine, like I don't know what it was. It's a small sapling, a bunch of weeds, So something is standing right behind that thing. So all of us put our lights on it. And we could hear a baby crying farther back in the woods. We could hear it was like, wee, it was creepy.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all, man.
No. So we got little Mikey and me have our lights pointing out kind of to the left of the semicircle. Rummy had his light pointing out to the right side of the semicircle. David had his light and gun drawn on that that big pile of bushes in the middle. And you could see the eye sign in that bush. And John is kind of sneaking up through the middle around the right side of that briar bush where this thing is crouched down at. And he's got his 45 out and his flashlight on it. And David's like, "Can you see it?" He goes, "I'm looking at it right now. It's looking right at me." And he says, "Everyone, don't move your lights. Just keep the lights." So we get on. David gets on his. David holstered his gun and then he gets the radio and he says, "Tom Scardy, come in." So Tom's like, "Yeah, what you got, Dave?" And he said, we told him the situation that we had heard baby crying, and then we put our lights up and we saw a female drop down. We have it cornered in a clearing behind some brush, heavy brush, but it's kneeling down and it's cornered. We have guns drawn on it. And one of our guys, we had radioed Big Kev. And no, we radioed him, and then Big Kev was with him. And he looked at, from what Big Kev had told us later on, is he looked at him. He said, he got off the radio and he said, "Is he pulling my leg? Is he fucking with me right now?" and Big Kev's like, I've known David for years. Really, he doesn't do that to people. If he's got one cornered, he says he's got one cornered, then he's got one cornered. We're like, well, I don't know, what does he want us to do? Because he made it very, Thomas Gardy made it very, it was supposed to be his live capture.
Right. He had a net gun or something. He
had a net gun. But you know what was in the back of the net gun trailer? Nothing. I actually saw it when he opened it up. There was no net gun. He had a guy from Wisconsin that was with us that night who was all in camouflage in a very high-powered rifle, and his job was to go up into that tree somewhere around Clay's Bluff with night vision goggles. Yeah. So now he's pissed that we're getting all the action and we have one with guns drawn on it. So he's like, "Is he fucking with me? He's got to be pulling my leg." So we're waiting for his, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to advance on it, or what do you want to do? Because we will. He told us not to shoot anything. That was the big thing. But David and all of them were not under contract from him. So we didn't care. So little Mikey, he was like 17 years old, so he hears a snap in the tree line right over here. So he moves his light off of where the briar brush was, where the female Bigfoot was. He moves his to the right or to the left to see what made that big snap. The moment he did, that thing got up on all fours and went and took off back into the woods. And we said, "Well, shit." So we all kind of regrouped back near the shoreline, and we pushed onward. We were hanging back for get a little breather and get what the game plan was. We have a cigarette, and we hear, "Ooh!" And then down the coastline where we're headed is, "Ooh!" And I said, "They're warning the others that we're coming."
Yeah.
And David's like, "Courts, Rummy, Michael, John, get your gear. We're about to have company." And finished up our cigarettes at the time, and when I smoked at the time, and I was getting the backpack together and everything like that. And one of the things that I did, since we were being rained on the entire way, is I had put that little Hi8 camcorder in my backpack. So I wish I had that Hi8 camcorder out, because the whole time we were soaked. And we don't have the kind of camcorders we have now, where they're kind of like rain resistant.
Right.
And so, yeah. So in this one, I mean, it was night vision, but it was, it would have looked great if we had, the flashlights on, and that I wish I would have gotten that whole scene on that high end, but we were just being rained on at the time. And, until we came up on that female, but, yeah, so it took off, and so we pressed on, and we were kind of a ways away. And when we got in contact with Tom Biscardi's Java Bob, or whoever it was on the radio, they asked us, "Do you want us to send you a boat?" And we were like, "Well, that would be nice." Right? And then it was quiet on the radio. And then John was like, "That would be nice." I think they were joking, because we used our boat to rescue them the night prior, and there was no answer. And we were like, holy shit, they just left us. Like, they're not going to send any help for us. So we've got to group up and make our way out of here. And so by that time, it was guns drawn. I was in charge of taking lead with the brightest flashlight and just leading the way at the front of us. So we went along that rough coastline to weeds and through, little areas where it flooded in through, walking through water, back up through a ravine. And we just pushed on. We just kind of watched. So I started hearing a splash out in the lake. And I said, "Is that fish jumping up out of the lake?" And then I hear it again, splash. And then we stopped for a second. We put our lights out there at the lake. And then I saw a rock, a softball-sized rock laying in the lake. And said, "They're throwing rocks at us." So we put our flashlights up in the woods. And we can't see anything because the rocks are coming from about 50 yards in. So we go on, and we get to this one spot where John, he leans up against the tree. I say, he goes, "Everyone put your lights up in the woods." And he puts his light up in the woods. He said the first thing that he saw was about 30 yards in was a gray face. It looked like almost like it was a charcoal colored Bigfoot, but he had a gray skin, like a gorilla. Mm-hmm. And when he first put the light on it, he drew his gun and was trying to put his bead on it to aim, and he instinctively dropped down on one knee. At that exact same time, he heard coming through the foliage, a softball sized rock, and it hit. If he would have still been standing up, it would have hit him square in the chest.
Wow!
I asked Don, I said, "We're going to radio in to Tom," and then he goes, "No." Because he already took Tom's radio that he'd given us and chunked it out into the lake after we learned that there was no boat coming for us. So we pressed on, and we got closer to where Clay's Bluff was, and we went around, and I knew there's some pathways that are coming down from the road, and I saw some lights. And lo and behold, two of our members, Brandon and Michael, were the ones with the flashlights coming down from the pathway from the road. They work in the oil industry. They had just come into town and heard about what was going on, and came out here. And when they got out there, they said, "Where are the rest of our team? Like, we're the Timberline team." And they were told, "They're out there somewhere. We're about to leave." Tom Biscardi's team was about to pack up and go back to the hotel and leave us. So we don't leave anybody ever. And they got their flashlights out of the car. I think Michael probably had his sidearm in the car. He said, "We're going in and going to find our guys." And they're like, "You can do whatever you want to do. We don't care." And Tom was about to leave. He was about to get him and Java Bob were about to pack up. We don't have time to look for him. And I think, from what I heard, either Big Kev or his sister Deidre pulled out her revolver and said, "You're not going anywhere." Is what I heard what happened.
Wow.
And she says, "You're not leaving people out there in the woods where we don't know what's happened to them. We can't get any radio contact with them. You're not going anywhere." And So they stayed, and we got up to the road, and I think David said, "Courts, don't say anything to Tom. Don't say anything to Jolly Bob. I think we just need to get to our vehicles and let's get back to camp so we can figure out what our next step is." I heard that somebody out of his group was going to just shoot into the woods and hope he hit something with us still out there. But it was messed up. And what he did after that trip, Thomas Carty, he actually went to the newspaper because the newspaper wanted to know what happened. So his description in the newspaper, the Paris newspaper, was that we were chased out of there. We had rocks thrown at us, and we were a bunch of bumbling fools, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we had to run out of the woods, and it was ridiculous. And I've never wanted to. And it sucks because they didn't send anybody out. They just kind of sent anybody out. They sent somebody to him the next day and just kind of said, "Hey, can you give us a recap of what happened?" So, yeah, it was pretty awful. But that night made me into the researcher that I am today. That was a scary night. We laugh about it now, but I think it also, one of the things it did, it showed me what these creatures were really capable of, because they were just toying with us the entire time. I mean, we really had to just keep pushing. I think wherever along that coastline we were, I felt so combat ineffective. It was ridiculous. I mean, we were armed, but I just, the way that they were working us that night, it was, we were being, I guess what it's called, shadowed. Yeah. Almost from about halfway to all the way where the rocks were thrown, we were being shadowed the entire time. But yeah, it was an eventful night, and we learned a lot. But we learned, we really can't rely on helping somebody like that when they put us in that situation. That was a bad situation. So
yeah, a very dangerous one.
Yeah. I mean, we held together as a team and pushed through. I was still new at doing this that year. Little Mikey, that kid was like 17 years of age. He had an interest in it, but he had never been out with us before. And here he is out in the south side of Pat May's Lake. I mean, I remember the second time I went out with Timberline when we were over there and got shadowed out of there and during the daytime. And I told somebody, I said, I don't want to ever be here with fewer than 12 people after the sun goes down. And then 2000, I think it was 2007 this happened. Here I am. Where am I? South side of Pat May's Lake with 5 people. Yeah. But it was exciting. I mean, if you put it, I'm going to tell you something. I'll be really honest with you. That night, the kind of the fear that I had about getting out of there, I had considered looking through my backpack to find a sketchbook, a piece of gum wrapper, or whatever, and a pencil, and writing a note and sticking it in my pocket saying to my family or my wife. At the time, she was my girlfriend. But I'm very sorry for letting this happen. If in the event that something happened to me, because I don't know if we're going to get out of here. Like, I literally was going to write a note and stick it into my jeans pocket.
Wow.
Yeah. But, David's like, oh, we're getting out of here. One way or the other, we're going to get out of here.
I mean, there's always swimming across the lake.
Yeah. I had to consider it. I mean, the water wasn't that cold, but... And there's also a few gators there too, so I wasn't about to do that either. But that was an eventful night. It was, I mean, unfortunately, it was with bad company, but that was a lot of people out there. We could have had a great expedition. It just happened to be him. And there's been some really bad blood between him and David. I think he knew that we knew a lot about that area. And he just wanted us out of the picture. But Yeah, it was gnarly. I mean, we're out and we're being lightly rained on. We're actually going into the woods to get so the canopy will block out some of the rain, and we're just taking a break for a second, and we keep moving, but you hear stuff behind us, and then you hear stuff deeper in the woods, and it's just like, oh my god, like why are we doing this? But oh well.
You live and you learn, but the living part's the important part.
I think, the interesting about this thing is we learned things. Well, we learned from, it's not really a mistake, but we learned not to do that kind of situation.
Yeah.
But out of it, we learned about the creatures. We learned their behavior. And that was one of the good things that came out of that is we learned a number of things about them from how they react to people in a very remote area at nighttime. So they are very, very smart. They know how to move. They know how to get up ahead of us. But I don't know. I wish I've asked David, would we have would or would we not have pulled, if it wasn't for Tom Biscardi, would we have pulled the trigger on that female? And I think it's been both me and David and most of us that are from that group that scenario is off limits. Mm-hmm. Unless it's by, self-defense. But I think David has always said, we don't go out to intentionally try to get one. Most of all of our firearms are for protection, so we can get some good footage. But definitely out in no-go zone is a baby or a female or a mommy one. Or in this case, I guess that scenario was a mommy with a baby somewhere else. And he said, I don't think we could ever do it. I don't think I could ever pull the trigger. I'm like, I don't blame you.
Yeah, but if you go by nature,
yeah,
that was probably one of the most dangerous situations you could possibly get in. An infant crying with mama right there.
Yep.
That's not a good place to be.
No, and that was completely by accident. Like we were just walking, and he heard the baby cry, and he put the light up, and the first thing he said he saw it. It was about 7.5 feet. And it looked like a big chimpanzee with size double D's. And it just lowered on all fours behind that foliage in the middle of that clearing. And, we went back the next day to go look around the daytime, that same area. We actually hiked down to where that spot was. I had taken a picture of it with David's finger pointing toward where the foliage was in the middle of that clearing. Yeah, it was, and we had totally got ourselves into that little scenario by accident. Like we were expecting a mama in our kiddo. Yeah. David actually has a scenario. He has a theory though about the baby cry. He says, I actually don't think it's a baby.
Think it was like a lure?
I think he thinks it's a lure. He does. He thinks it's them trying to lure us.
Does he just try to come up with the scariest scenario possible?
No, we just happened to just run into it, unfortunately. Brandon and Michael have took their car one time and parked at Lamar Point for overnight camping, and they said that they rolled the windows down partway and just sat there and listened. They said they heard the baby cry. And I said, I'm out of here. And I said, there's only a few things that scare us, but that's one of the things that gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. At that point, I don't care what it is. I don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah. They've heard some, there's been some vocalizations that are creepy, but the baby, he said, what really creeps me out about it is it sounds like a human baby. It sounds like a newborn infant. He's like, I've heard like baby chimpanzees or something like that. It sounds like a human baby. And, I don't know. I distinctly heard it that night, not faintly. I think he was farther back, so he got to hear it real well. But I was up front, lighting up up ahead of us when this happened. But yeah, that was an interesting scenario. It could have gone south. It could have gone good. I don't know. It could have gone real bad. There could have been 3 or 4 of them right behind the foliage, out further out and back in the woods. And, I don't know what would happen. So, yeah, creepy.
Well, man, I'm going to have to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your stories.
Sure.
Wow. I need to have you back on sometime.
I've got more. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I don't do a lot. I have some friends who've done several of these, they do them kind of often, but with their input, but I don't get to, it's rare that I get to tell some of the stuff that's happened to us out there.
I will definitely have you back on sometime. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.